time for us to look at the issue of data, as according to the NPDC, issues of data privacy breaches have surged in Nigeria. In 2024, more cases were recorded, and the agency is worried about this. You and I should be, because we have reasons to avail different institutions, organizations, different apps, our data, even as we becoming more and more digitally inclined in this time and age. So when you want to sign on to a social media platform, you ask certain information, and you're asked to give permissions to certain applications in your phone. For some, is the microphone, camera. Someone was saying the other day in the office that she just said a word, talked about something, and the next thing she opened Google, that's the first thing that popped up, and she was like, I am scared. Well, there have also been cases where people say my app or my device is listening in on me, and so we had to go fetch an IT expert, someone who would talk about this with us, and also educate us on ways to go about this to ensure that our data is not compromised, and how we can effectively handle this. Even as a business, you're thinking, customers trust me with your information. How do I ensure that unauthorized persons do not have access to customer information? So we have with us the CEO of Hyperspace and Neural AI, Seyi Akindehinde. Good morning, welcome to the show. I'd like to say Happy New Year to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good to be here. Good to see you. Good morning.
Morning, Seyi. It's a pleasure having you on set this morning.
Thank you very much. I think it's the first time you'll be on set.
This year, right?
It's good while I'm on. So it's good to have you, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure to be by your side.
But let us also let you know, he's been giving us fire here. Yes, I mean, Doc.
I mean, like, look at the infrastructure. I mean, this is absolutely, I mean, if he doesn't give fire, I'll be surprised.
All right, now let's talk about data privacy breaches. Where do we even begin from? Because we need to fill forms. We need to, sign on to different applications. We need to do a lot of things. And at this point, information from individuals, corporations are collected. How do we know that the managers of this information are doing a good job? Sometimes the managers of the information are even confused when they know that there's been a data breach. Sometimes they say it's not from us. We don't even know how this happened. Can you walk us through the process? How do some of these things happen? Before we look at the Nigerian case, is it a peculiar situation?
Thank you very, very much. I think in order to start, we need to actually demarcate between data privacy and data protection.
Okay.
So when you're talking about privacy means that, let's say for instance now, I have Oga's number, he's giving it to me. Privacy simply means that for me to, if somebody asks me for his number, for me to give that person, I need to seek his consent. The fact that I have it doesn't mean that I should give it out. So when you're online and you give information, maybe like BVN or NIN, now you give it to organizations, it means that the organization receiving it from me must say, okay, given this information, what do I want to use it for? And then they need to seek consent. Then I need to know the intention, what they want to do with it, and how they're storing this data. So that's privacy. But data protection simply means that when they now collect that data, how are they protecting the data? So a typical example, when you look at the way a lot of these things get behind the scenes, you were saying, sometimes somebody will call you, and be giving you your details, your account number. And you see that a lot of the ways that these things happen, you'll be shocked at how easy it is sometimes to get data. Now, for instance, a very simple example is when you're coming into any building like this now, you will fill a form. So you will ask you for your name, your address, So imagine, I was just coming this morning. So imagine a situation where the security guy who is there, this is a studio where you interview influencers, big people. So imagine a situation where one day he's just scrolling through, maybe one day you interviewed maybe a state governor, and he just, as part of what the state governor has to do when he's coming in, he has to fill, his phone number. And he now sees the phone number of, this is my state governor. And then he now calls the person and he says, Mr. Governor, how did you get my number? So that is privacy. That means that obviously the organization that person works for will be liable, because not only have you breached the privacy, the person has actually, the security of the data. So you can now see how data privacy and data protection, all tie in. And that's how a lot of these things get around. So you imagine a situation where somebody just goes around all the buildings in Lagos and starts to paste the security people that look, all the people that come in as they're filling them. Even ordinarily, somebody can come in as I'm filling the form. I've seen other things. I just take a screenshot of the page and I've seen it and I go out there. And because I know that obviously those numbers are correct, the name is there, the address is there, the phone number is there, the email address, everything about that person is there. It simply means that that information is legitimate and then they sell it online.
But how liable is the organization that created that atmosphere for such to happen?
That means what the NDPR is saying, the Nigerian Data Protection, regulation is saying that you are liable because it was through you. If they investigate, they have the investigators. So if they come in and investigate and they see that the information was actually, gotten through that organization, you will pay a minimum of 10 million, depending on, the amount of, data that was siphoned. Minimum of 10 million, and it could reach, like I said, I think it's about 10% of your, 2% of your annual revenue, just because of that. That's how serious it is. So that's how liable the organization is. So it means that as people are working in, even for organizations, even filling in, there needs to be some kind of safeguards around the data that people are filling in. That's why sometimes when people go to some places and you're asking them for certain information, they're asking you, why do I need, to give you this kind of information? It has to be clear that, we are actually, taking this information because of X and Y and Z. If that information is not clearly spelled out, then you cannot ask me, say, for something like my phone number or my, BVN or my NIN or what have you in that kind of situation.
There's also this case, you find people who are seeking employment, and the employer actually writes on the employment letter that we can give your data to a third party. And then, of course, a sign off, desperate to get a job, sign off for that employment. And then, of course, his data is used inappropriately. What right has such an employee? In Nigeria, we have this thing they call emergency consciousness. Like, when you're too, it happens online as well, even with phishing, when people just fill in their details. Now, if you fill it in yourself, number one, you have inadvertently given consent to the person. So if you are an employee, you are looking for a job and you're filling all the job boards online and they are asking you for email, they're asking you for your BVN, your NI, and you're filling it in, then it is your responsibility to actually know why are you filling it in, why are they asking you for it. You notice that sometimes even online, when you go onto some websites now, some of these cookies pop up and they tell you, there's a privacy information that says you consent to us using because a lot of those browsers have text files that as you are doing things online, they are monitoring it. So they now give you that, if you click OK, it means that you have given us you are consenting to the fact that we can trace you. So if you go from Google to one social media to another to Amazon, so you are telling them that we can. But if you say no, there's also an option to say no. But a lot of people, they don't even read it. So if you don't read it and later on you find your information out there, and you see in a lot of this, like you said, the third party, when somebody collects it and they give your information to the third party, there's what is called trust inheritance. Because a lot of those things, people, when they process information, so if, for instance, I trust you, but I don't know her, but you trust her, and then you have my information, the fact that I trust you and you trust her, does that mean I should trust her? No. So a lot of those things too, the people collecting the information have to clearly state it there, that this information we are collecting, there's a possibility that we're going to hand it over to a third party, and the third party is this kind of organization. You may also find it in. So once you consent to that as an individual, then there is nothing they can do about it because you have already given the consent. But if you don't consent, that is where the problem is. That's where the issue of privacy breach now comes in, where they are now saying, okay, if I don't consent to this thing, and then this kind of situation happens, that's when the NDPR will come out. And the regulation also governs the person receiving the information to that. In order for you to consent, they must explain to you, why they need the information. So it is their right to explain to you. If they explain, and then you still consent. But if they don't explain that this is what they are going to do with your data, and then you sort of fill it in, then they are still going to be liable.
Okay, thank you very much. Excuse me. Now, when I looked at all this, sometimes I see that I'm very, very certain that sometime from now, we'll be having digital lawyers or lawyers who are in charge of protecting or making laws that govern digital information and all of that. And I see you speak somewhat from that perspective as well. Let me allude to what Doc said. You fill a letter, a form, you want to work in an organization, they've already given you a letter of appointment, and they are telling you, oh, there's this likelihood that your information may be transferred to a third party, maybe to a subsidiary of the organization, where you might be transferred or you might be required to carry out some form of services there. Of course, you needed a job, you have to accede to that, and you acceded to that information. That, I want to think or believe that there's a trust that the organization and the third party should exercise in making sure that data is well kept and not being used for unscrupulous purpose. And some other forms of data that you are giving out, and maybe you went to a lot of other buildings, like you said, and you don't know where and when you have dropped your details somewhere, and someone used it for an illicit purpose. You doesn't look like you have the wherewithal or the capacity to really investigate who gave out your data. Don't you think the organization themselves could use that as an alibi when it comes to legal cases?
Yes, you are very correct in that instance. I think that's why there's this FCCPC, the consumer, yes. So those are the people that are now in charge of making sure that a lot of, like you said, the laws now favor the end user. So they have the consumer protection at heart. So they will take it up on your behalf. So that's why, as an individual, you also need to know who to call. So when that kind of thing happens, you can call the FCC, PC, and they will take it up on your behalf and investigate the case. Now, where they now, sometimes these investigations can take a long time because they are technical. So where they now investigate and they actually see that it was due to the negligence of the organization that your data was used, even though you filled it in, that's where that data protection now comes in. It is no longer about data privacy, it's now about data. If somebody, for instance, now, two things. If I walk in here and I fill my data, and the security guy here, sells it to other people, and somebody uses it, that is privacy. That's internal. Now, but if the security guard leaves his desk and somebody from outside walks in and snatches the, that from and goes, that's data protection. That means you have not put in place enough security. You will also be liable. Right. So data privacy and data protection, they go, hand in hand. But you see, when we're talking about privacy simply means that you have the data already, and I know that you have it. Now, what I want to know is, what is the same way you can't wake up now and, your son cannot go to your bank and ask them for your bank account balance. They won't give the person. Now, in a situation where he goes in and he asks, and they give him, or had the balance of your account, even though he's your child, he bears your name and all that, that is a breach of your privacy. And they will now be liable, to what happened. But if a hacker hacks into the bank, and then exposes, data, that is another offense. So a lot of the things we're saying is, most times we model everything, or because in Nigeria here, sometimes you don't even know if it is some privacy breach or data, which is why NDPR has now said, look, if you do this and we investigate, and that's why they're actually called the Nigerian Data Protection, because when you protection is the at the end of the day, if whether it is outside, internal or external, it's still the protection, of data. If they now investigate and they see you found. But a lot of the times, so a lot of us as end users, consumers, we give this information out. Like the doctor said here, when you're looking for something, you're looking for a job, you're looking for anything, as soon as you know, a new bank account. Oh, we're recruiting. Want your BVN? Want your NIN? You're just putting even your card details. People will fill it in, and then one day you now see that somebody is calling you and telling you, oh, your account number, your this, your address, and you're wondering how the person you yourself give that information.
Thank you.
Okay,
very much.
let's look at this.
I just wanted to throw something in here,
Yes, sir.
because there's also some level of ignorance in the environment, and people really do not understand. I go to the UAE, even from the airport, I understand that you cannot even use somebody else's picture on your page or your DP without consent, and everybody seems to be aware. But here there is huge level of ignorance, because the privacy breach itself is a very big language that the common man on the streets don't realize. And so we just wake up and somebody say, oh, I need Lagbaja's number, then I just send to him without really realizing it. Do you think that we are communicating enough to make the common man on the street understand the implication of releasing somebody else's data without consent?
Thank you very much. I think we are not. And you see, and I also think a bit of it is cultural. You know, we are the way we are here. If, for instance, now I go out now and all of a sudden, you know, one of these big telcos, I see their billboard and I see my face on it. I say, even though they have not taken my consent, you know, because they are big. If you go and tell someone, they will say, be happy now. They're using you now. And you know, aren't you happy that everybody be, you know, even though they have not paid me anything. And the truth is, if you sit down and think about it, you're a nobody and you're like, you're seeing your face there. So you even be happy that, you even be telling your friends, go, you see my face on the billboard and all that. You see, but over there, they know that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are a big corporation or small. Once that kind of, you take consent, you can't just go online, take a fine picture, even though you don't know the person, and then start to put the person on the billboard, and then you think the person. So we are not communicating the right enough. We are not letting people know that, like you said, you can't just take a year because it's your birthday and now go on your social media, I take your picture, I just say, oh, happy birthday, and then I put it there. But we do it here because most times when a governor is celebrating birthday, by the time you buy the news dailies, almost every page will be saying, oh, happy birthday. But where did they get the picture? Did they seek consent? Did they ask him if they even wants to be used? You know, if he wants his face to appear. But we are just so used to it, even at the top level. So we need to do a lot more education. And I also think it's a bit cultural, which is why when things like that happen, you know, even people don't know what to do. They don't even know, you know, how to report it. But I think that is where probably media, you know, houses come in, where every time they are singing it in that, look, these things should not happen. We've seen cases. In fact, it's so cultural that a lot of us, if for instance I'm an upcoming, you know, and I put and I do a video online of maybe a song by a celebrity, you know, the truth is a lot of times when they repost that song, I'm even happy that, oh, somebody has taken my video and has reposted it, and but the truth is, before even he posts it, he needs to ask me that this thing that I am putting, should it? But it is. But to be honest with you, because it is cultural, we are all we've all gotten into this social media wave. Everywhere you go, you know, as soon as you get into a studio like this, even I do it most time, I take a picture. Oh, I'm in the studio. But then, have I asked for consent? Have I told the owners? Maybe you don't want your studio to be out there, or maybe you don't want people to, you know. So those are the things that we also need to communicate, that this is the line, and if this kind of thing happens, this is, you know, what should eventually happen. I think that's what we should.
Okay. My questions in twofold. One, it touches on the data protection, and the other, when a breach has happened. So for some applications, when they ask for certain permission, they even tell you that should a third party use it, they have no control over how a third party would use it. But the question is this: you are the one availing my information to a third party. How come you have deniability regarding how the third party uses it? If you do not trust the third party, why are you availing them my information? Because you see that you sign on to a particular site or to a particular application, they're using a third party to complete their task, yet they do not want to claim responsibility for what that third party does. That's on one hand. And then when it comes to protection, there are certain methods or processes or technology that could limit the rate at which information can be stolen or can be misused. For instance, you have at an organization people coming to fill a particular logbook so they know the visitors that are coming in, who they're coming to see, and their details. Do we necessarily have to keep using that in this time and age, knowing that, as you said, even those who are coming in there for a particular purpose can have access to other people's details? Anybody could see it. So what are some methods, some technology that some organizations can use to limit the rate at which they expose other people's information to people who could use it for dangerous reasons?
Thank you very much. That is where data protection measures, now come in. So you can use, like the first example you gave where an organization is processing your data through a third party. So most times when you want to open any fintech app now, they tell you to put in your BVN. Now that fintech themselves do not have access to your BVN, but they are processing your BVN through a third party. So the reason why they do that is because you are just using their interface. If you put your BVN, they go and they fetch it from a third party, maybe through like an API. Now the reason why they're saying that is that if anything happens, they don't store your BVN, they just pass it to the third party. And the thing is, the third party can actually use it. It's the same way, for instance, when this is a studio as well, okay? Now when you have people coming to interview, the reason why you say, look, whatever this person says, it is not our idea, we won't be liable.
Disclaimer.
It's a disclaimer. When people will say, but why are you inviting him if you are still going to put out the disclaimer? It's just to absorb yourself to say, look, this guy can say anything. It doesn't mean that is our own views or our own position. So that's the same thing they are doing. It's a bit like saying, oh, this person we are passing your BVN through us, but we don't, whatever this third party does. Now, what they can now do is a lot of the policies now stipulate that when you are taking that data, you encrypt it. So it should not be open. You should not be saying, like the logbook you're saying now, it is clearly in the open. The security guy can just wake up one day and be scrolling and be seeing, a celebrity comes here, and then he calls the celebrity, I sing, and the guy is wondering, how did a security guy get my details? So in lots of those things need to change. So you can have digital where people just come in and they clock in and it goes into a data. It doesn't even see the data that is there. So that's why when you go to some banks and some organizations, by the time you just get in, you don't fill any form, you don't write anything, you just key in the thing. No, they don't even see it. It's just an interface where you take data and it goes into a back. And then even the storage is encrypted. So those are some of the technologies that they can use. It is not in the open, which is why a lot of banks, financial institutions, telcos, they go through serious audits to make sure that numbers, and even if you go to, there was a case that happened with a big telco where a guy was recruited, and back end you obviously will see number, they call it call detail record of president and all that, and he was sitting there one day and he was seeing the governors, and then as a young guy he just called, and the governor was like, how did you get my number? It was like, because he works at the back end of a big telco. Those are so a lot of the things are now coming that even as a staff of the organization, you don't see. You only see maybe the first 4 digits. Even when you are putting your card number online, they just tell you put the first 4 digits and the last 6, the remaining, the middle, they don't even see it because they don't want somebody to use it. So those are some of the things you can do. You can use encryption in transit. You can use encryption in storage. So when you are even storing the data on the server, it is completely encrypted. Nobody can see it.
All right.
Yeah, but there's something that Blessing also raised, which is one issue that you also see, especially when you're dealing online, and that of course you are expected to sign on a cookie, and they said accept or reject, and you reject, you cannot continue. And of course, the person who is offering that service deliberately has programmed it in such a way that even if you are not willing to accept, but for the fact that you need that service, you have to accept. Is there any protection in that respect?
In fact, this case has always been so, which is why lawyers will say, obviously, there's a difference between contract law and consumer protection law. So they will tell you that it's a contract. It's either you take it or you leave it. If you don't, it's like when you're installing some software too. Maybe you need one accounting package, And the license, we don't even bother to read the end user license agreement. We just click next. You know, you don't even know what data. So, but the license, let's say you need the software, for instance, you want to use it, and then the license is saying, oh, but we can use your data for something. And you know, if you don't continue, that software will not be installed. So eventually, which is why we now have consumer protection that will now go through, and that's why a lot of these, you find out that all these big companies, Meta, they're always being fined. Why? Because there a lot of lawyers are carrying out due diligence and no, you cannot include this clause in your agreement because you are giving the end user no choice. It's almost as if he doesn't sign it, he won't get the service. So they are always finding that's why a lot of times they are being fined, they are being, going through this serious audit. So that's what we need to do as well here, to say, okay, we need to get, like you said, we need to get technical lawyers, not lawyers that you need to understand the technology of what you are doing. If you don't understand the technology, but what we don't have here are those kinds of, maybe our university system needs to start to look at digital as a, so we have digital lawyers. We have accountants digital, so that when you speak with a digital accountant, okay, what are you expecting? What data are you expecting? What data? Okay, we are not expecting this data. Why is it coming? Okay, then they can work together and start to create these rules and laws that will now favor, the consumers at the end of the day. But without that, they can just give you that, and if you don't, so you just say it's contract law. Is that when you go to the bus stop, guy says I'm going to HOD, then if you enter and you don't have that's contract law, you can't come and hold him. But at the end of the day, if you now get to your destination and he now tells you something that is supposed to be 100 naira, my own boss is 5,000, I take it. Then what right? He will tell you entered, but there has to be law to guide that. You cannot charge 5,000 between Obalende and Oshodi. No, that is wrong. And then at the end of the day, you now come and blame an end user who is none the wiser for not paying for.
All right.
You can look at also the issue of liability. Yes. Is it also possible for a corporation? You just made an example now of a certain person who had to call a governor and he had that access because it's at the back end of the corporation's body. Is it also possible for corporations to transfer liability to employees who will, without permission, breach the data of a third party?
Absolutely. That is right now, it is now perfectly legal when you are signing on as an employee of a company that if anything happened and we trace it to you, that, maybe it was even negligence or maybe it was even ignorance, or you will be liable, so they can transfer that to you. It will be in your contract. And you'll be liable. Once they do the audit and they verify that it is you, that is perfectly, you can transfer it.
All right. In cases whereby you didn't sign any of such agreements, so I think the reverse will be the case.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me take you away from personal information down to corporations and organizations. I am interested in knowing when data. If I can remember vividly, last year or so, we're told that a lot of companies in Nigeria went through the system. They were hacked and they paid dearly for it. That some of these organizations secretly went to pay the hackers to let them off the hook. How do hackers make money with your data? When you have your data, your name, your telephone number, your residence, your resident address, and probably the bank verification number, even your account details. And we know that there are some parts that you are supposed to fill as the owner of the as the owner of those details before money or anything can go out of your custody. How do they make money from it? And how can we prevent that?
Wow, thank you very much. That's a very, very good question. Data is massive business. She was just saying something that, sometimes you're saying, maybe you're thinking of something, maybe you're discussing on your WhatsApp, you're discussing, maybe I need to buy a new camera. And then the next thing you go online and you start to see adverts for new cameras, for things that you were like, how did this? Data is massive business. And if you think about how these global organizations, these media corporations make money, it's advertisement. The only medium of the 90% of the commerce on the internet is adverts. So they sell this data to people so that they can better tailor whatever they are selling to you. That's why you may be browsing something on maybe Instagram, and then you go to Facebook, you see the same thing, you go to, and you're like, how are these people, are they following you, or are they monitoring you? Because that data that somebody has, that's why they sell it.
It's huge business. So if somebody has access to 1 million records of Nigerians, they can go to, you know, all these organizations and say, look, I have 1 million tested records. You have their names, you have their addresses, you have their emails. That's why sometimes you sit, especially during festival, and you get a text message that is telling you, oh, everything about you, and you'll be wondering how they got this information. They get a lot of these people when they hack it, they get the records and they sell to this big. If you look at how media, Facebook free, Instagram free, WhatsApp free, how do you think
making money?
Are making money? You are the product. So when they have enough of this data, they can now target advertisers, and advertisers pay a lot for this data because advertisers want to focus. They want to, like you're talking about at the beginning, now you're talking about a suit with. So they know that, oh, this person likes a pin-striped suit. So they want to take that data, have that enough knowledge about you, and start to focus, you know, that information on you. So that's what they use the data for. They use it a lot to make money, and obviously to protect. A lot of organizations are actually doing. They're trying, but what we see is that sometimes we see internal collusions. You know, like I gave you an example now. As I know that somebody can come to the security guy and say, look at this logbook that you're filling in. Do you know this thing is money? Say, hey, can't you see all these people? Yesterday you interviewed this governor, his details are there. You interviewed this celebrity. Is it? Do you know you can sell this thing? There are people looking. If you tell someone, there are people looking for a doctor's number now. Like if you say, look, I have doctor's number, will you pay 1 million for it? Say, hey, is it legit? You pay 1 million for it, and the person, you give the person the number. So imagine that kind of, it's this big business. So that's what, you know, they do. That's why there is you know, the regulation, the fine. I mean, have you seen some of the fines that these organizations are paying? Hundreds of millions of dollars. Even in Nigeria, a lot of the banks that were found you know, complicit to this thing, they're paying 2%. If you're paying 2 to 10% of your revenue, you will know that that is a lot. So you have to safeguard it. But we've just started the whole, you know, data protection thing, and hopefully, you know, as we go along, we'll start to have a lot of some kind of, you know, decency around data protection and data privacy regulation.
Let's look at the peculiarity of the Nigerian situation. What makes it easy for people to have access to data, and even when there are breaches for organizations and those who are responsible for it to get away with it? Is it that our laws yet have not caught up with a new evolution in the digital space, and we need to make sure that happens quickly? And what are some of the pitfalls to avoid when you avail corporations, sites, and even people your information? What should you be cautious of?
Yes, the reason why people have access is, just as we have even just used the security guy, somebody has custody. So even in NDPR, they say there must be a data controller. There's always somebody in charge, and then there's also that person can also delegate to data processor. So there's somebody in charge now, this is where technology controls, technical controls now come in, because you cannot put your trust in a human, because sometimes humans, he can go home today, you know, have problems and then come to work and so that's why you need to now, it's like when you go to the bank, there's actually somebody in charge of the strong room now, where they actually loot, you know, cash. So, but what you now put is security around, okay, how much cash can you load, how much data can this person see, what are the technology controls we can put? Like I said, you can, a lot of these things you can put encryption on at the back end, so that nobody, even as you are filling it, there's nobody who is seeing, you know, the data. Anytime the data is needed, it is decrypted at, you know, source. Remember there was, we had a session last year when we were talking about how somebody was claimed to hack 100 million Nigerian BVNs and was selling it at 100, you know, naira. Obviously for that kind of huge, humongous data breach, it must have been somebody. So a lot of, we need to put technical controls, we need to put procedural controls, processes have to be in place to, even the person that you are employing to work in that thing, you need to you know, check them to make, because some people are literally, I mean, some banks don't allow, or some organizations don't allow staff to go and do all these hacking courses, because how is somebody who is doing marketing in Kaduna branch going to learn ethical hacking? What do you want to do? Do you want to hack your? So a lot of those things are now being put in place to say, okay, if you want to learn this thing, why are you learning it? Why are you going through a lot of these things? So we are having a lot of those kinds of things right now.
Yeah, recently we had Donald Trump talking about the reason why he was trying to do so much tariffs on Europe. And one of the cases he cited was the fact that European economies had been ripping off American businesses that operate in their client. And he mentioned specifically what they were doing to Facebook and some other things that were American origin business. Do you think that our laws here are strong enough to actually also self-deterrent to companies that are not Nigerian origin? Because recently we saw that Falana is suing Meta for privacy breach. Do we have sufficient law on ground to actually deal with those cases that we can get reprieve from courts?
Well, we are getting there, because I even know that last year too, was it last year or 2023, Facebook Meta was also fined, I think, around 220 million by, so we're getting there. And you see, it's just serving as a look. Before, it was business as usual. People just come in and there was no, there was nothing. Even if your data was breached, there was no recourse to anything. But now we're starting to, especially with the NDPR, they're now knowing that, look, there is a data protection, and I like what they're doing. They're also now, what they're doing now is they're now doing awareness for even the, people. They're doing awareness for general people that work in there. Then even for like market women, going on site to tell them, look, don't give your information out, don't do this if you want to. But at the end of the day, humans would also be humans. So our laws are getting there. Of course, for Chief Falana to be suing, they are it's just, at least it's almost like, look, we can do this thing. So you need to be careful. You can't just come in here and do what you cannot do in other countries. So we have, and so right now, every organization that is here, every organization has to have a DPO. That's what they call a data protection officer. Within the whether you are a small company or the CEO can be the DPO, but there must be, because at the end of the day, if anything happens to the data,
a digital police.
You must, exactly. Without data, I mean, everything is data, everything is digital now. So that's what they're saying. So our laws are getting there, and even the organizations, those corporations, they already know that it is not business as usual. You have to do this, and then they now have people who will hold them accountable.
Okay, somebody gave me an info yesterday and said if I have a Samsung phone that I'm no longer using, that is either I give it to my child or I just don't trash it, because there are software available that can actually retrieve all the data that was on that device. Now, are those makers of those kind of software, are they liable?
They are not. You see, that's what we call it, digital forensics. You see, if you're on your phone and you have a picture and you delete it, where do you think it goes? Even if you go into your recycling bin and it doesn't go out, it goes onto a space on the computer. You don't see it physically, but technically it can. It's like if I give you Microsoft Word, write a document, and I write something in it, and then I change the color of the font to white to match the background of that Microsoft Word, and I give it to you, and you open it. To you, it looks like there's no information. No information. Somebody who knows can just right click on it, open it, and then change the font color and see that information. That's how those. You can't blame technology. Technology will always exist. It is the use to which you put that technology. So that's why when you regulate, you don't regulate a piece of technology, so don't make this software. You regulate entities, you regulate the players, the people who are going to use the software, and say, okay, for you to use this software, you need to obtain XYZ license, you need to go and get this, you need to go and get that. So they are not liable, they are just tool makers. It's like knife, when you go to the market and you buy a knife. They will sell it to you. But now if you get home and use it in the kitchen to cook, that's one thing. But if you use it to stab somebody, that use is, you won't blame the creator of the knife or the maker of the knife. Why? You blame the person who bought the knife. So the same thing with that software. There is no phone, there is no computer that you cannot recover data from, even after deleting. That is the job of a computer forensic expert, which is why they go and study it. So they are not liable, those tool makers are not liable. It's only the people. That's why for you to use it, you have to be like maybe a law enforcement, agent, even for information, to collect it. Nobody can just go now and take your data.
All right. Yes. Okay. So sorry. Now, one thing I want to look at is this. You've said a lot, and so if you have nuggets to give out to Nigerians now who are watching, most especially with their devices, some of the little and simple things they can do on their phones to prevent the third party from accessing their data, or probably from a negligence by their own action to, inadvertently transferring their sensitive information to a third party.
They need to they need to read the fine print. So if you're downloading an app and you see that an app that is supposed to, maybe you want to use to write a document and it's saying, give me access to your microphone, give me access to your camera, give me access, and you are clicking yes, yes, yes. You shouldn't, because you should know that this app does not, why does it need my microphone? But what we see is that a lot of us, we're just not conscious enough to be able to do that, because here, everything that is free, even things like going to a place to charge your phone. Do you know that, if I was going to come with it, if I actually knew we were going to talk about this, there are chargers now that have embedded, they're small as it is, access points, like Wi-Fi access points, such that when you connect it to your phone, that access point will run, another phone will run a software that can connect to your phone through that charging point. So, but because here we are used to, once your phone, but you get charged at the end, you plug it. We are not even mindful of a lot of, these things that we do. And it's because if you go to a conference now, and they're giving free
Wi-Fi
drives, not even Wi-Fi, all those flash drives that you connect. The moment it's free, and you be like, oh, free, 1 terabyte, you collect it. What do you do the first thing when you see it? Plug it into your computer. As soon as you plug it into your computer, something will run, a malware or and then all of a sudden your information is being anything you do. But we're not. First question is, why is somebody giving you something free? You go somewhere, free Wi-Fi, and you connect to it. We don't question it. We even ask. So those are the issues.
How can a free Wi-Fi expose
but for some of these things, doesn't mean that digital literacy now is beyond what it used to be. And so for corporations, even when you're buying your computer hardware, you must have knowledge of the hardware you're buying, where you're procuring from, and if you have need for external IT expert, you should know who you're consulting.
Absolutely. There's need for it. Everybody, just like we are very conscious of, everybody has to be security conscious, digital. Just as when you buy a car, the first thing you put is security. Everybody go and put an alarm system. When you get a house, put a camera. It has to be the same thing for phone, laptop. Everybody has to. But because we are so nonchalant about it, anything that has to do with no, it's not. In fact, you even get to some places where, like, you go to some place where somebody is trying to use an ATM and the thing is not working. They just see a next customer. You don't know this person. Please, I'm trying to use this thing. And the person is asking you, okay, put your PIN. And you're putting your PIN number. You're putting in front of the person, right in front. It shouldn't be. We should be so secure. But when things don't work, as soon as you try something and it doesn't work, the next thing is when you call and the person is asking you for information about that thing. What's your MIMEA? What's your this? You are just giving out that information because your own thinking is you just want that to. Not knowing that digitally, unlike physical information, if I steal your phone now, it's physical, it is missing. But if I steal your digital information, you still have access, and I also have access.
Okay, we wish we had more time to talk about this because the issue of data privacy and data protection is very broad. But we'll bring you on another time to look at some areas we couldn't explore today. But I get the point of the message today is that take nothing for granted. Everyone needs to be digitally aware and digitally conscious of whatever information, everything that we do.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Seyi Akindehinde, who's the CEO of Hyperspace and Neuro AI, for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.